on the computer. You guys might just have to accept that. I'm not positive.
Mhm.
But we had such a busy, it's funny because we went from, I think half of the doula world in Connecticut was in sheer terror after March and April because so many people were not getting inquiries for
Mm.
May and June. I know I saw a lot of like very established people being like, "Ah." So we went from that to all of a sudden we were turning away work as a
Mhm.
team, which is amazing. Um, so we've brought on 2 new doulas in the last week, so Shelby and Ashlyn, and then we're talking to one more tomorrow. I'm talking to one more on Monday, to try to round out the team because the feeling of having to turn away work, it's an amazing and a horrible feeling at the same time,
Mm.
right? Like it
Yeah.
means the word is getting out, but also we can't help these families. So we're trying to build the team and keep it small because I love the team atmosphere of like everybody knowing who everybody is, but
Yeah.
we need it big enough that we can help these families. So it's funny, we had a lot of last minute, something about that weekend of May 15th. Everybody gave birth, and on night 2, that horrible night 2 in the hospital, everyone panicked and they all called. So I talked to mothers who were sobbing on the phone because of their experience. We talked to other parents who were just like their heads were exploding trying to figure this out. Um, and then we talked to other parents that we were actually able to help. So it was a really interesting weekend of trying to juggle all of that. But thank you to everybody for bearing with all of those messages and trying to jump in and help because that was amazing.
Mm.
We got some people covered and they said that it totally changed their coming home experience just in the one family that we were able to get it all together very quickly. It made a world of difference. And Joyce and Delia have been amazing with working with this one family because they needed that reassurance, right? Like Alexis and I were just talking about a client that we're with, like they need the reassurance of they love their baby so much and they just want to do the right thing. And
Mm.
it's cool. We're helping them like learn how to parent together while we're there without actually teaching them how to parent, but like they have to work together and learn how to do these things together. So it's been an interesting and fun time. Um, we're starting to get a few more June inquiries. So if there's anybody who still has June availability, like I know a couple of people do, but send me a text because then I'll kind of know it in my head. Like, hey, this person has a couple afternoons a week available right now for June. I know a lot of people have July. But another thing that I was just thinking about is like vacations.
Yeah.
As we're getting like there's going to be a lot of vacations. It's going to kind of be like the holidays all over again where we were navigating that. We were getting intake calls, but we're like, okay, but this person's away for this holiday and this person does want somebody to come for Christmas Eve and this person doesn't. So keep that in mind as we're getting those intake calls and as you're saying like I'm interested in this job, just please tell me like so that I can tell the client before matching you I have this amazing doula. She's available those 3 afternoons a week. However, she's going to be away for one of those weeks or a partial week or, whatever. That way they can kind of have that in mind because some people are like, totally fine, love it. Other people want consistency. Um, but also it gives us the opportunity to reach out to other people on the team and say, hey, so and so is going to be away for this one week. Can we tell this client that if they decide to move forward, that we can match you with them to cover for those couple of afternoons or something like that? So just kind of keeping that in mind as we move forward, it makes it a lot less confusing for the client and it makes me not look bad because I'm not disclosing things. But like not only will I disclose it, but you guys also can disclose that on the Zoom calls with the client because then they're hearing it twice because pregnancy brain is real, the new mom fog brain, very real. So the more we tell them that, the better. Um, we also were talking a little bit, especially with some of the newer doulas, about like the scheduling aspect. And that's all you guys. Like once the client tells me how many, like they'll say, I want 8 weeks of 3 nights a week. I check with you to make sure like that's what you guys agreed with. But then you guys get to schedule those nights with the client. Like you don't have to tell me, we're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights. The only time you would need, I mean, feel free to tell me, just don't feel like you have to. The only time it really starts coming into play where you incorporate me is when they're trying to add more nights. Then I would need to know that. When they're trying to reschedule you constantly, I am happy to be the bad guy and step in and say, hey, like, she carved this day out of her schedule and it's not going to work for her to move it around. Is it an emergency or is it just a preference? So feel free, make me the bad guy. I will call them. I've had to do it before. It's not fun for me, but I'll do it. I can happily do that. But yeah, just kind of keeping all of those things in mind, and then setting your boundaries right from the start is a huge one, because we've come into a lot of problems where we want to help everybody, but if we're not setting our own personal boundaries, then we're setting ourselves up for failure and the family up for failure, because something's going to come up. So kind of set your realistic boundaries when you're making these matches and agreeing to schedules, because then we're less likely to be flaky with them, right? And have to cancel or have to, sickness happens, emergencies happen, but just kind of really realistically think about what you're capable of so that we can best provide for these families. Everyone's done a very good job of that so far, but we have had things come up in the past where we were trying too much to help everybody and we weren't filling our own cups, and then it backfired on us. So just kind of something to think about with that. I know I talked about twins in the past and wanting like more training. We're getting a lot of everybody is getting twin referrals. I don't know if it's the CARS place is having a really good success rate in Farmington or what, but we're getting a lot of twin referrals. So I talked with, or I'm going to talk with Devin with Happily Family After. Happily Family. I can't ever say her business name, but she's in New York City, very successful agency, and she has a lot of experience with twins. So we have an appointment to Zoom in a couple of weeks to discuss setting up a training for you guys, so that we can all feel a little bit better equipped, whether it's a day shift or a night shift, whether it's about how do we support the parents best, like, because that's a mentally and emotionally very different thing, having two babies. How do we just juggle two babies in the middle of the night that are screaming, So I'm going to talk with her. I'm hoping to be able to provide that for free. However, I don't know her rate for doing a Zoom. So it might be something that we all contribute to. I will let you know. If it's too much too, I might wind up asking another agency if they'd like to join us, if there's doulas in that agency that are interested in learning more about that, just because it's coming up a lot. And I want you guys to feel confident in taking care of twins, because it's a really scary sounding concept. I'm much more scared of taking care of 5-month-old twins than 5-pound twins, because they're harder to juggle and they're more wiggly. So, and they're louder. But we all have our different fears. So, does anybody have questions about any of that? No?
I did have I guess a little question. The twin training sounds amazing. I have a large fear of twins, so I would be very interested in that. I noticed with Allison and Lou that what was really helpful for me, and I really think it ended up being helpful for them too, was doing a prenatal visit before our postpartum shift together. And I that came naturally for me just from being a birth doula and them wanting a little bit of guidance for birth as well. But and my next client, I could do that also, so it naturally works out. But I was wondering if that is something that any other doulas in the agency have tried out or that's worked, and if that's something that would be worth like weaving into the contracts, like seeing their space before coming in when the baby is new, so like new parents mom doesn't have to get up out of bed and show us her kitchen and things like that, like we're familiar with the space. And
I
I
like
love
that.
Zoom and phone calls, but like there's just a different level of like connection and conversation you
Mhm.
get in person.
Yeah. So I think what you're talking about is almost two different things. Because the going in person to like the meet them in person, I do that and you guys can absolutely do that. I love to set up a time to meet with my next client, like probably 2 weeks before the due date. And
Mhm.
just, I always say, hey, can we meet face to face? And you can also give me the lay of the land so that you're not freshly home from the hospital and now you're showing me where everything is. And I will
Yeah.
literally have them, if I'm going to do a lot of meal prep, I will have them open drawers
Yeah.
and show me what's in them because then I'm like, okay, I know they have a potato peeler. I can't
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
where it is, but I know I saw one.
Yeah.
And I don't charge for that. But
Okay.
the other thing that you were saying, I love the idea of offering a visit where we do charge because it's going to take more time than like a 20-minute pop in and like see where the bassinet is kind of thing, and see their faces. Where like with this client, you went twice, right? For a couple of hours each time.
Mhm.
And you literally had a prenatal with them and discussed
Mhm.
all sorts of things. And I
Yeah.
really like the idea of offering that to first time parents. I think that's a
Yeah.
really good idea of not necessarily like a meet and greet per se, but a actual prenatal, like let's sit down, let's discuss, let's educate.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. And they might go
Okay.
for it more than a class because it's individual.
Exactly. And yeah, because and these things are value driven too, right?
Hmm.
So it's so individual. That makes so much sense. Thank you for helping me figure that out. So that can just be like a natural conversation that happens where, you know, home visit will happen and whether it's a 20-minute like essential tour of the home
Hmm.
versus a prenatal would
Yeah.
be the difference in charging for it or
And
not. That makes so
now
much
that
sense.
being said, like if you have a job that's 45 minutes away from you and they are like demanding that you go out there, like we can talk about compensation, whether it's
Yeah.
gas or something like
Yeah.
that. Like we can definitely, if that's something
Yeah.
that like people want, we can talk about it. Like Chelsea just
Yeah.
had one the other day that was asking her to drive an hour to meet. It didn't wind up working out. And but like we would have given her gas money or something towards that. Because
Yeah.
that's far. But
Mhm.
yeah, the regular run of the mill, like a lot of us, that's for our own good. We want to meet them. But
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
I think it would be valuable for me to, as I'm matching, like as I'm kind of reaching out, like, hey, who's interested, also be like, would you be comfortable if I told them on the initial Zoom that we could do a prenatal visit of like, whatever, whatever they wanted to discuss? Because I've gotten called in afterward and spent 3 hours answering questions of
Hmm.
parents that like
Hmm.
I one time it was a mother who absolutely was suffering from postpartum depression because all of her friends had babies and she thought she was going to give birth to a doll. Like she literally told me, I thought that I would very easily breastfeed this baby, change her diaper, and then lay her down in her bassinet and then I could go do my makeup and do my like online shopping and watch my show and then come back and she'd be awake and we could do all of this over again. And so I had to really talk her through that. Like, you're not a bad mom. You're not, your baby's not bad either. It's just, it's hard. So being able to discuss those things beforehand and like
Yeah.
give realistic expectations
Yeah.
could be really good. And then a lot of you guys are birth doulas. So being able to kind of add that perspective too is very valuable because they want to know about the hospital. And if they don't
Yeah.
have a birth doula, I mean, it could also be a nice plug for being their birth doula.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think like setting realistic, like you're describing, setting realistic expectations ahead of time is a incredible tool for supporting perinatal mental health
mhm,
because like recognizing what normal infant sleep is and just like normal newborn behaviors, what to
mhm.
expect for breastfeeding can help with that like
Right.
harsh impact,
Yeah.
especially for first time parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And that could be a really good time too and like if you're not someone who feels comfortable offering referrals, you can also like reach out to me and say, hey, these are the ones we need. But it could be a good time to be like, hey, are you planning on breastfeeding? Do you have a lactation consultant?
Oh yeah.
Let's
yeah.
pause. Let's reach out. Like, let's check on your insurance. Let's see who they cover. Let's reach out now and set up a prenatal. Or like, are you predisposed to having like suffering from mental health problems? What is your insurance? Let's get you set up with Catherine so that she can, like
Oh,
there's
that's my
different,
whole prenatal appointment is like, who are the specialists?
yeah, yeah.
Lactation,
Like
perinatal mental health,
pelvic floor, all of the
pelvic
things, like being
floor.
able to give
Like,
them those referrals ahead of time.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
setting them up ahead of time. It could be really good.
I was telling, so Shelby is my babysitter when I go working overnight. So I was telling Shelby last night that like the Zoom call that I recently did, the mom was exclusively breastfeeding and she wanted me to do overnights, but she had zero interest in waking up to pump or waking up to feed the baby. She wanted to sleep 8 hours straight. And I was like, you're gonna have to pump
No.
or feed the baby. Like your supply is not adjusted yet. Have you talked to your lactation consultant about this? She was like, what do you mean I can't sleep 8 hours? Like, isn't that why you come to my house? And I was like, well, yes, we want to like give you more rest, but also like milk function doesn't work that way. Like, I don't want you to get an infection and like engorgement and like the whole 9 yards. But she just like it completely blew her mind that she couldn't just like go to bed and sleep for like 8 or 9 hours and wake up and like everything is sunshine and butterflies with the
In pain.
breastfeeding thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, I think that's when we start talking about goals too. Like, is your long-term goal breastfeeding? And I just realized I had bunny ears sticking out of my head. That's funny.
That's all right. I think I have a couple dinosaurs behind me. So
Yeah. And that all kind of brings me to like several of you guys who are on the team, we've been talking about like, because a lot of you guys are contracted elsewhere as birth doulas. Some of you guys, if you are a birth doula, like I know Chelsea, you're going to do your training and all of that. We can talk about as I get referrals or reach outs, I mean, for births, like we can absolutely contract through Tiny Miracles. Those of you guys who are birth doulas who are wanting to do some private stuff as well, like some of you, I have referred the client directly to you. I just tell them it's a referral, and we're just doing a referral fee. So when the client signs the contract, then instead of me taking an agency percentage for my time, we're just doing a referral fee now. So that's an option for you guys. Like if you want to do all of the contracting yourself, the invoicing yourself, but it's a private client, so it's not conflicting with anything else. Like that's definitely an option. Now we're doing a $200 referral fee. And most of the time, like the client is finding me through my Facebook marketing and different things like that. Sometimes though, it is also in conjunction with postpartum. So I will do the initial intake call. I'll do a Zoom call with them. I'll discuss the benefits of a birth doula to the best of my knowledge, since I am not a birth doula. And then I also discuss postpartum with them. And I make it clear, like the postpartum contract will come through me, but the birth doula contract will go through that birth doula. And I'm trying really hard to keep it together as the same person, because that's very ideal, right? You see them through the birth process and into the there. If they reach out to me very briefly, I send them on their way through to this other person. Like, let your conscience be your guide if they decide later on that they want to do postpartum, because they only reached out to me for birth, that's, I guess, a different scenario. I'm not really sure what's right in that scenario. If it was just a very quick, like, hey, here's their number, let's send them on their way. So we'll figure all that out as we go. But yeah, right now, I think most of the birth doulas on the team we're just doing the referral fee and all of that. And it just is working out well. But anybody who is contracted through me that wants to do births through Tiny Miracles, we've got a competitive rate, which is kind of nice. And I'll do all of the invoicing so they can pay with their HSAs and all of that too. One thing to note, I've been listening to a lot of like business podcasts for doulas and all of the things. And I've decided as of the end of December, everyone who is contracting with Tiny Miracles, I would love for them all to have their own LLC. Just as a liability thing, a legality, all of the things, like that's something that we're going to start requiring is a registered LLC. It's easy to get online. I think it's $120. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty once you stop crying and figure out the right website like I did, then it's very easy. It's just finding the correct website. I think you have to register your business name just to make
Yep.
sure there's no other businesses with your name. And then, yeah, just an LLC. It proves that you really are a business. It makes things different for taxes, I think, simpler. But also, it's just another, like, we're trying all the layers of protection, right? We want to really protect ourselves. So the liability insurance is one level of protection. The LLC is another. Then they can't take your assets. They can only touch your business. Another level of protection that I'm not going to require, but would be amazing, is a business bank account. Again, not super hard to get. You just go to the bank, you provide them with your LLC information, your employee identification number, and it's very like you pay yourself. Like you would just give me the new bank information. I would input it into QuickBooks for you, so it'd still be direct deposit, but it's yet another layer of protection against your family's assets if something horrible were to happen and you needed that protection. So I'm not going to require it, but it's just a suggestion that some agencies do require it. I'm not really sure if it's a legality thing or if it's just protection, but
It's also great for taxes.
yeah. Yeah, it all makes differences for sure. Like definitely check with accountants. I need to find a better accountant this year, but a good accountant will tell you all of the ways that that is good for taxes and stuff. And definitely make sure, like, if this is new to you, if this is your first year being self-employed and doing it all, like quarterly taxes, taking out that like 20-ish%, all of the things, super smart, set it aside, don't touch it. It doesn't exist. Pretend it doesn't exist. That's the hardest part. And then I think one thing is definitely still, like, as you're meeting new clients, ask them their mask rules. If you think of it, shoot them a text before you get to their house. I mean, if you're somebody who is like, absolutely not, I will not wear a mask, tell them that on the initial consult, please. Because most people, I haven't worn a mask since January in a job, but especially like I'm going to be working with twins in September, they're probably going to be early. I might have to wear a mask. That's not even a COVID thing. That's just, we don't want any germs. So washing hands as soon as we walk in, but also like before you get there, like to meet them in person, just shoot them a quick text. Hey, what are your mask rules in the home, kind of thing. And it can save you from embarrassment. I had a really uncomfortable situation 1 year ago where for the one time I did not ask, and they got very upset. So lesson learned. You want to hear my horror story? I'll tell you later. But yeah, lesson learned. And then something came up on a call that we had where there's a lot of nurses, right? Turning into doulas. And her concern was, do clients ever ask the doula for medical advice because they are a nurse? And so we just want to make very certain whether we're a nurse or not. Like they might think that we have. I just got asked about a DNC the other day. Somebody on Facebook was messaging me acting like I was a doctor because they think doula, they think midwife, I think. And I was very careful, like, not to give any medical advice whatsoever. And that's not even a client I'm contracted with. So we just have to be really careful. People might ask, how does my C-section incision look or something like that? Like, you gotta be very careful. We can absolutely say, I think we should call the doctor though. That's a good one. I think that's oozing. We should call the doctor.
I had to say that the other night, actually, the little guy is on albuterol treatments, like through the nebulizer. And mom was like, do you think I should give him the next treatment or do you think I should skip it? And I was like, not for me to choose.
And that's an easy one to get roped into saying, yeah, I give it to him. That would be very easy to accidentally, because we get so close to our clients too. And the lines are when it comes to something like that, the lines could be blurred, or we could just like not even think about it, you know? So even something like gripe water, if you're going to give them gripe water, if you see it in the thing, ask them before they go to bed, hey, I see you have gripe water. I see you have gas drops, because those, we don't administer medication, but we can administer gripe water and gas drops. But always ask before the first time, like, hey, do you want me to check with you before I give these to them? Do we have free range over the, how do you feel about us giving them to the end? And most parents could care less if you're giving things like that, but always ask. It's always better to ask. Even like diaper cream sometimes. If you see like really, there are some parents who are very fussy about that. So you can ask, how would you like me to apply the diaper cream even? It's sometimes like with a very nervous, anxious mother, asking that. I've gotten in trouble for not using gloves. There were no gloves around. They told me to put the cream on, but I got in trouble for not using gloves. There was no spatula either. So we just have to remember we're dealing with very vulnerable people sometimes and do our due diligence. Just easier said than done. I think the only other thing was just making sure, like, we have a lot of amazing mothers on our team. So making sure that like childcare is set up, like reliable childcare can be really big. Like I really like, Chelsea, I'm going to use you as an example. Before you will say, yes, match me with this client, you first text your childcare to make sure you have
Hey,
coverage.
Shelby.
So that's huge. That's such a big deal that you're making sure before you meet the client that you, because you don't have something like regularly set up, you know, it's a big deal. So that's just a word of advice that I would give. If you're going to be matching with a job, make sure that you have not just like a general inkling, but like, yes, this person is available to watch my child because my partner is not. Yes, I can match with this job, because otherwise we're doing the back and forth, the emailing, like, well, I might have somebody available, but maybe not. And then it all falls to pieces. So yeah, if you don't have somebody. Oh, you're muted, Alexis.
Gosh, classic Zoom faux pas. Can I ask a question to the group? It's just kind of a personal question about childcare, but I would love to just get, if now feels like the right time. I know
Yeah,
we're
I mean, I'm done all my stuff, so my list is done.
So I have childcare for my son who's 2.5. But Monica knows the past 2 jobs I've had, he's been sick the first day of the both jobs, and I've had to call out, and I was mortified, because like it freaking sucked. And I was sick too. Like there was just like no way that I could go. But he starts preschool this fall. And so I have a job starting end of September. And I do like, I've had a conversation with my mom that she's happy to kind of like be a person for like those mild sicknesses when you like can't be in school, but you're like not needing your mom at home, so I feel confident about it, and I expect it to be, like a little bit of a transition. But I did bring it up to my upcoming client during our consult, just that like I have a toddler that will be starting
For little guys
preschool.
in preschool too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I knew
Good.
she got it, but I
Perfect
wanted to be really transparent with her, just because I guess my question is just like the shame and guilt I feel around that. Like, and I mean, I know I'm not the only one, but the thought of like having to cancel on somebody, I care about my clients so much, and the thought of leaving them hanging just, I don't know, fills me with shame. And I'm curious how others have navigated it, or if this should be like a backup situation, maybe like as being part of the team, we should reach out to backups. Like, yeah, how have others handled this?
I think that it's important to give yourself grace, because toddlers are brutal with sickness, and there's nothing we can do to avoid it. And they're still so little that like they still need us to be home a lot of the times. Like you said, like the mild colds and stuff, like I'd be okay with grandma taking over too. But beyond that, even if I wasn't sick, I'd be like, I can't, like I need to be home. But I think that like put the shoe on the other foot. Like I had a client reach out this week and be like, okay, like little guy is really sick. Like, what's your comfort level? Like she
Mm.
had him tested for like, COVID, RSV, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, keep me posted. Like it was like, there was 2 days before I had to go back over there. And it was like, let me know that he continues to progress in the right direction. Cause I also don't want to bring whatever you guys have going on back to my house and back to my kids. So I think it does go in both
Mhm.
directions. And I think especially the parents that we're dealing with that are second time parents, they get it a lot more. But
Mm.
I do feel like that also guilt and shame when it's a first time parent that it doesn't click for them yet. Like
Mhm.
they just don't get it as much as a second time parent, I think. But I think the idea of maybe backups, Monica, I don't know if it's possible to like,
Yeah, well, and the nice
but
thing
it
is
sounds like a good
most of the
idea
clients
just
that
to have.
Alexis is gonna take are within driving distance of me. So like the
Yeah.
first time it happened, I was able to go be a backup. The second time I was able to offer and they were
Mhm.
like, no, we're good. But yeah, backups are, it's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
part of why I'm trying to make my schedule a little less hectic so that like I can offer daytime backup if needed. I'm always like, please say no when I am.
Yeah.
But
But I
as
think
long as
that's
we can
nice to be
offer
able to
it,
offer it to families.
offering it, and then like, typically I'm the point person, right? So I'm the one that they've already talked to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm a good option as a backup. But
Mhm.
yeah, especially second time parents, like they get it. And first time parents are so paranoid about germs that
Yeah.
they don't want us. I mean, I had COVID for the very first time ever after I was a week late in starting with this job. I
Mm.
then had COVID and we had to wait another week.
Mm.
So I don't think that it does not get much more humiliating than that.
Well, and it's
Booking a
like I hear you
vacation
say that,
and then and then I'm late.
but you say that, and I'm like, yeah, you had COVID, and you can't control that. Like that's
Right,
completely
which
out
is
of control.
exactly
So
what
I
the
can
client
hear it from
said.
another person, and it's like,
Yeah, but like, yeah, your toddler's in preschool. You have no control over what
yeah.
germ they're bringing home and what they put in their mouth and what they licked and
Mhm.
like who poked them in the eye. Like the whole nine. Toddlers are wild animals. I mean, they're a little feral, so they're gonna bring home all the germs, and we can't do anything about it.